You've spoken in opposition to the speed of the drawdown, but let's accept it as a given. It is what it is. It's going to happen on the president's timetable. What can the United States hope to do with the levels of troop presence that we anticipate for next year and the year after that?
Right. Well, I think the military commanders on the ground will do their best to make sure that we consolidate the gains that we have made over the last 10 months in southern Afghanistan. They also are talking about shifting more forces to the Eastern Front. That's the border with Pakistan, to be able to begin to stabilize some of those areas. So I think that will be the shift that's made in 2012. And after that, of course, we will be focusing on training the Afghan security forces, standing up the Afghan military, and that is really the hope for the future, that we can train those forces up to a point where they can take care of Afghanistan security. They can make sure that an extremist group does not again take power and provide sanctuary to terrorists who want to attack the U.S. So that is the goal, to build up the Afghan forces. But I do think that we will need a residual force even after 2014 in Afghanistan. And what that number is, I think this will have to be determined by our military commanders on the ground. And we will still have to provide financial support, both for that army that we're helping to stand up, and have a strong strategic partnership with the government there. That is critical. We need a friendly government in Afghanistan. We cannot go back to the situation in the 90s where a group like the Taliban, who supports international terrorists, is in power.
Stephen, in Iraq, when the late Bush and early Obama administration wanted to start transitioning American troops in Iraq, they took them out of the areas that were most dangerous. So they were still in the country. Could we see a form of that working in Afghanistan? Is there a way to stand back from the places that blow up and cause you the worst casualties, but still provide security, oversight, training, a backup for the nascent government and army there?
Well, I think Americans would be in favor of things that got soldiers out of harm's way. I mean, one of the things we talked about earlier was the costs of war, and one of the costs we didn't talk about was the human cost. And that's exactly what you're getting at when you discuss, should we be transitioning soldiers less out of frontline duty and more support role where they're less in danger. As of yesterday, 1,650 troops had died in Operation Enduring Freedom, the Afghanistan war. We've placed a tremendous toll on our soldiers in fighting this war. And the reality is that every day they're there is another day that they're putting themselves in danger. There's some parallels to be drawn from Iraq, but there's some parallels that when you look at them, paint a very different picture. When you look at the Iraq surge versus the Afghanistan surge, what you see in Iraq was you see decreasing violence, you see decreasing troop casualties for U.S. forces. When you look at Afghanistan, you see the complete opposite picture. 2010 was the most violent year for American soldiers of the war. 2011 is on pace to be the most violent year with the most troop deaths. We've already seen 204 American soldiers killed this year. The fact of the matter is that our soldiers are, as they transition into the East, unfortunately, which is a more dangerous area, those numbers will only increase. So the concern I have with drawing a parallel to Iraq is, one, that the situations are very different in terms of their applicability. But more to the point, I think the reality is that we need to have a policy that focuses on our troops' safety and our overarching national security, not just what's good for Afghanistan.
Three quick points. On the parallels between the Iraq surge and the Afghan surge, we've heard a lot of people say that because the surge in Iraq supposedly succeeded, that's why it succeeded. It will succeed in Afghanistan. Of course, we now know that most of the drop in violence in Iraq was not attributed to the presence of U.S. forces there. It was a political reconciliation process that still is not finished, but that was initiated by the Iraqis. And you know, then the question is, when can we leave? You know, as far as Senator McCain's concerned, it's never the right time to leave. He said during the 2008 campaign, well, we have troops in Korea still. Why wouldn't we still have troops in Iraq and Afghanistan? I think it's that mentality that is most disconcerting to the American people, that we do still have troops in all of these places around the world supposedly performing a support function. And yet what they've actually done is relieved these governments of the responsibility to defend their own citizens from threats. We, the United States, have taken on these burdens, and it's simply unnecessary and too costly. We could do it at a time when the United States was the overwhelmingly dominant economic power. But right now what we're doing is subsidizing these countries in their inability or unwillingness, frankly, unwillingness to deal with their security challenges. And so I don't want to see a situation where we create incentives for the Afghan government to continue to kick the can down the road, to continue to refuse to make the difficult decisions that will be necessary, and continue to rely on the U.S. military and the U.S. taxpayers to fund their security.